Hi, and thank you for joining us for this workshop session, Intro to Trauma-Informed Care and Best Practices. I'm Aline Yell with the Core Network, and next to this video, you'll see the chat and Q&A features. Feel free to use the chat to converse with others who are attending this session, and if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A feature, and our presenters or our Core Network staff will respond to your questions following this session. You'll also have access to all the workshop materials on the session page of our event app. I'm so excited to introduce you to our presenters today, who are members of the Hopeworks Camden staff. Hopeworks is a community-based nonprofit in Camden, New Jersey, and one of the programs that they offer is to do this training. Our training today is led by Kate Daugherty, Director of the Hopeworks Training Team, Jace Elam, the Training Team Lead, and Kaori Jackson, the Training Team Intern. They're going to tell you more about themselves when they join us, so I'm going to hand it over to them now. Welcome, Hopeworks Training Team.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kate Daugherty. I am the Hopeworks Training Team Director.
Hello, my name is Jace Elam. I am the Hopeworks Training Team Lead.
Hey, I'm Kaori Jackson, and I'm the Hopeworks Training Team Intern.
And this is Intro to Trauma-Informed Care and Best Practices. So we are joining you from Hopeworks in Camden and also in Philadelphia. And today we will be talking about ACEs and an Intro to Trauma-Informed Care. So Hopeworks is a workforce development organization, an anti-poverty organization out of Camden, New Jersey, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And we are a trauma-informed care-based nonprofit. And so the best people to actually talk to you about this are going to be Jace and Kaori. So Kaori is actually one of our participants. So Kaori has gone through our technology-based training program and is now in the second phase, which is becoming an intern with one of our 3 social enterprise businesses. And Jace, do you actually want to tell folks about your journey through Hopeworks?
Yes, so I actually basically went through the same process that Kaori did. I was a trainee and I went through the internship with the Hopeworks Training Team. And now I'm a full-time staff member. So I'm an alumni, but I am also staff.
All right, so before we start, I'd like to go over some workshop objectives. So by the end of this workshop, participants will be able to list ways to change the question, identify ACEs and how it can affect someone's future, understand a person's history before making assumptions, implement the different tools that we use at Hopeworks to help us manage our emotions, and how to use these tools in our own working environment. And I would like to take a pledge. We have some fun games for you all today, so please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear to participate in all activities so that everyone looks silly. Great. Now that we have that started, I would like to give a quick heads up. This is a trauma workshop and it involves some self-reflection as well. So if you feel uncomfortable in this session, you are more than welcome to mute or stop your camera and emotionally regulate yourself in a safe space, and you can come back when you feel ready.
Yeah, and for those of you who are joining us virtually, that means that you're also welcome to just take a pause to walk away from this presentation. It's a recorded session, so you can come back to it whenever you are ready and feel like you are able to come back to it. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce you to some other folks who are going to be helping us out with this presentation. Jace, Kaori, and I are absolutely wonderful, but you would not be getting the full experience if it was just the 3 of us talking. So I would like to bring in some folks who are actually going to be helping us with this presentation. So we have Dan Kraus, who is our Senior Director of Marketing and Business Development. We also have Reggie, who is part of our business development team as well. We have Gabe and Miles, who are both part of our Hopeworks training team. So Gabe and Miles, if you could come onto camera as well so we can see you both. And pan to Miles a little bit, please. So we can see him as well. Thank you. So this is the rest of the team. And then we will also actually be using our core network team. So Emily and Eileen, if you could come onto camera as well so we can see you. We will be using the entire team to play some games, do some fun activities, and to answer questions. So thank you all so much for being willing to participate in some of these activities with us so that we can apply a lot of these concepts to different things. So everybody can hop off camera again, but know that you will be seeing their faces again throughout the rest of the presentation. So how do our histories affect us? So we are actually going to tell you a story. And during this story, I want you to really, really carefully listen to something that happened to Kaori and listen to this story that happened to Kaori, and then we're going to ask you a question about it. And I want you to think about it. So take it away.
All right, so something awesome that happened to me yesterday is that I was heading to the store and I was waiting in line, and suddenly a robbery broke out, and I was very, very scared, and so were the other patrons. But luckily someone saved the day. It was Batman, actually. And he starts fighting crime like he always does, beats them up, and everyone scattered afterwards, including me, with some stuff that I also stole. Don't tell anyone. But that's how I met Batman yesterday.
So Kaori got to meet Batman, which is pretty cool. And did you get to see any of the cool stuff, any of the cool gadgets that he had, Kaori?
Probably a shark repellent.
Okay, yeah, so pretty cool. So for the rest of my team on our back end, you don't have to actually come onto camera, but I have a really important question. What superhero do you see? You can just shout it out.
Batman.
Batman.
Okay. So, Batman. Jace, do you want to explain this?
So what Kaori did by telling that story was prime your brains. So by telling a story about Batman, you were able to see Batman in this image. However, when we tell this story in larger groups, we split it up, and there are you'll hear a story about one team hears a story about Wolverine, and another hears a story about Batman, and each team sees a superhero that they heard the story about. So if you look head on, you can see Wolverine as just one singular image, but if you split it in half, there's two Batman like facing each other like that. And the purpose of this is to recognize that our histories affect the way that we see the world and the way that we view things. So if you are coming into something with certain expectations of people being, if you're coming to work and you have certain expectations about people participating and getting things done and being as productive as they can, that's your expectation of what their goals are. But you don't know what their goals actually are. So someone may come to work and their goals are really just to make sure that they get away from whatever chaotic environment they're living in. And they're not really focusing on the work that they're doing because they just feel comfortable being at work because it's a safe place. And they might not be as focused on what the actual work goals are. So they might not be getting your goals met, but they're getting their own goals met because they feel safe in their work environment. So it's really important to think about the way that people behave, not just through the lens of our own experiences, but also to tap into their own experiences and to see why they're behaving the way that they're behaving and what it is that's influencing that.
Exactly. So this is a phenomenon called priming, and it actually primes your brain to see one image or the other. So you can either see two Batmans that are facing each other, or if you kind of look at it, the image as a whole, you can see that Wolverine. It's pretty cool.
All right, so with that out of the way, let's say, what is trauma? So trauma is a deeply disturbing and distressful experience that overwhelms internal and external resources. Now, can anyone answer this question? What is the difference between hurt and trauma?
So Reggie, what do you think the difference between hurt and trauma is?
I think the difference is,
Don't forget to come off camera.
sorry. Think the difference between hurt and trauma. Hurt is more of a physical pain, where trauma is more of life threatening, in my opinion.
Thank you. How about Gabe? What do you think it is?
I think hurt's more of like a minor emotional and physical pain, while trauma is more of a intense and severe emotional or physical pain.
That's very interesting, Gabe, and then you would be correct. The difference between hurt and trauma is that hurt is more temporary and external, and while trauma is lasting and internal. Let's go for an example. So, let's say that one day a young girl named Emily was on her way home from school. She was running super fast and she fell down, but she got back up even though it hurt and called it a day. Slapped a band-aid on it, scraped her knee, it's fine. Now, how about a traumatic experience for Emily? Around dinner time, Emily's mom called her downstairs for dinner. When Emily was about to go downstairs, her big brother actually pushed her down the stairs and laughed at her, and she cried. So this would show Emily that every relationship in her life she's afraid of the relationship in her life mimicking of her brothers. Would they treat her the same way? Would they even accept her? How would she be loved? In the view of trauma actually changes your worldview. You see it through all your biases. So it can really affect how your relationships and to form new relationships as well. With that, let's play a fun game with Kate.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much for that, Kaori. So now we are going to play a game. And for this, we are going to, I voluntold our core network friends. So I am going to call on Eileen and Emily for this. And we are going to play Pictionary. So I am going to share my screen. And we are going to play Pictionary. So can everyone see my screen? Great. So for this, Emily and Eileen, I need you guys, you're going to have a minute and a half to draw. So on one side, I am going to put a big A over here and a big E over here. So you each have one side of the board. And you are going to draw these 5 things because it's getting springtime. We need to feel that spring energy. So we need you to draw these 5 things on this jam board for us. And we are going to then judge you a little bit on your drawing skills. So are you ready? Are you up for the task? Okay. Yes. So on your mark, get set, draw. Okay, we got a sun going. Oh, we got some colors. I love it. We are rocking and rolling, doing great things. Okay, some more colors and some clouds. I love the smiley face, Emily. Okay, going. You guys got about a minute left. We're getting those rain clouds. Doing great. Keep it going. Uh-oh. What's going on? You guys got to hurry up.
Help. Stop. Somebody's
Come on.
erasing
You guys got about 30 seconds left.
No.
Keep it going.
Oh.
Keep going.
What?
Hurry up. You guys got 30 seconds. You guys got about 20 seconds left. You guys got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Can we get a round of applause for our participants? Okay. How did you both feel while you were playing that game?
Felt a little cheated.
A little bit defeated?
Felt like I was fighting with somebody. Someone was erasing everything I just did. Conflict.
Okay. So felt conflict, felt defeated. Okay. Yeah, that definitely felt a little bit. I also felt you guys getting a little bit angry.
It's like you start to feel like this is unfair.
Oh, absolutely. It was meant to be unfair. I will give you that. It was 100% meant to be unfair. So I will confess, I was the one erasing your pictures. So it was, yeah, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble. So yes, it was absolutely meant to be unfair. So this game is meant to be exactly unfair. And because what it's meant to do is it's meant to elicit the same reactions that people get when they experience repeated trauma. Because imagine that you building up your pictures and drawing is you building up your hopes, your dreams, and your aspirations. And then I come in and I just keep erasing, right? And I'm not just erasing it once, I'm erasing it over and over and over again. And that represents all of those little itty bitty things, right? The things that build up. It's not just something that happens once, it's something that happens over and over and over again. And the really interesting thing is that during this 60 and 90-second game, we can elicit the same responses that people have to trauma over a lifetime. And so the super common 5 responses that we see during this and that we see to trauma is the same. So the first thing we see is that people just keep going, right? They kind of put their heads down. And in some ways, that's a good thing. In some ways, that's a bad thing. Because in some ways, it's a good thing that people just keep going, right? Shows a lot of resilience. But in some ways, it means that they don't change anything that they're doing, right? They just keep going no matter the circumstances. But it also means that they just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again without changing anything. The second thing that we see is that people give up. And they just are like, nope, I'm done. It gets erased once and they're like, nope, I'm done. And they just cross their arms and they stop doing anything. The second thing that we see is that people lower their standard. Or the third thing that we see is that people lower their standards. They start off and they're going to get all 5 of those things that we listed on that list, right? They're going to build the most beautiful sun. Emily, I think I saw this with you, right? You're like, I'm going to have pictures. My sunshine is going to have a face on it. And then by the end of it, you're like, I'm going to draw raindrops. Right? The end of that, you were like, I'm going to have raindrops. And if that's all I get, that's going to be fine.
My clouds got a lot messier.
Exactly. Right. And so an example of this that we might see in real life is that, let's say that a student is going to school and they want to become a doctor or a lawyer. And then someone in their family gets into a car accident. And so they have to go home and take care of their family. And that's fine for a while, but then they have to get a job to help family pay bills. Again, totally fine. That's something that we all have to do. But then they start to believe that that is all that they are capable of. And they start to lower the standards for themselves. And they're like, the only thing that I will ever be good enough to do is be a manager at this store. And that is the only thing that they think that they are capable of doing. When at one point they thought that they were going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? So they have lowered the standards for themselves. The other things that we see is sometimes we see hurt people hurt people. So we see sometimes that they don't know that I'm the one erasing the picture. And so they go and just start erasing the other person's picture because they're convinced it's the other person that is erasing. Or they start scribbling on the other person's drawing, right? Because they are so convinced that it can't be someone that they see themselves get hurt and they lash out at the nearest target. So that's something that happens. But the other option that we see sometimes is healed people heal people. And so sometimes people will ignore the rules and they will start to work together to do that. And this one is particularly salient for people in healing and helping professions, because people in social work, in teaching, and things like that tend to have higher instances of trauma because they've experienced trauma and they want to reach out and help people. But it also makes them more vulnerable to be re-hurt unless they've actually gone through the healing steps, because a lot of times they want to jump in and start helping before they've actually gone through those healing steps. But before you all jump off camera, what do you think the difference is between the people that give up and the people that keep going, or the people that lash out and hurt people and the people that help people are? What do you think the difference is between those two groups of people?
Perhaps the people who keep going, excuse me, have more hope that there's, I don't know. I always think there's still a way to win, you know. I'm like, I'm gonna finish. I know the old stuff is getting erased, but I'm gonna make raindrops and flowers. I'm gonna finish, you know. There's got to be something good at the end of the rainbow, kind of thing.
Yeah, so a little bit more hope.
Maybe they've seen more success in their life, like not for themselves, but they have seen examples of other people in their life be successful.
Yeah, so had those like role models of that.
And they've seen resilience and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So both of those are like really close to what it is, right? So the actual answer is the audience, right? And so the audience of the people. So the audience members, if the audience members are like, oh man, that sucks, but it's fine, keep drawing, right? If they have those sort of audience members, they're more likely to keep drawing. If they have the audience members that are like, woof, I am so glad I did not volunteer for this. I am so glad Kate did not volunteer me for this. They're a lot more likely to give up. And this tracks with what we see in real life, right? Because studies show that having one caring adult in someone's life helps to build resiliency. Having one person and having a support system is what actually makes the difference between whether someone is able to get back up after they face adversity. Because resiliency is this big buzzword that we hear all the time right now. But resiliency isn't something that we're born with or born without. It's something that we have to build up. And so it's something that we create in children. It's something that we create in other adults as well. So thank you both so much for letting me tell you to volunteer for this activity. And I owe you chocolates. So thank you so much. And you can hop off camera.
You're welcome.
All right, so what are ACEs? So ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. Adverse childhood experiences are the stressful or traumatic events that take place before the age of 18. Now, to demonstrate what ACEs are, we have a cool little rap that a prior intern rapped about ACEs that we're about to play for you now.
This for all different races, so tie your shoelaces. I'ma wrap it up about a survey called ACEs. All these hurt faces in all different places. This is the trauma team telling you that you can make it. Just do the survey and check off the answers. I know you've been going through things that leave you highlight some standards. Maybe your mom's got cancer and maybe she's been abused. And you saw that as a child, so it left you amused. We feel your pain. Trauma team got sympathy. I put myself in your shoes. I got empathy. The sins in your past will determine your future. And you can't take it back. There's no rewinds or bloopers. But you can change the way where it won't be no drama. And you can change the way how you deal with your trauma. You'll be good. If you're living in the hood, don't just do it regular, but you should do what you should.
That was really great, right? Sierra rapped excellently. So we're about to take the ACEs survey right now with Jace.
So this is the part where we told you that there'd be a little bit of self-reflection. So if you don't feel like this is a time that this would be a great place for you to do that self-reflection, feel free to fast forward through this part, to take a step away and to come back when you feel ready.
Okay, so this is the ACEs survey. So I'm going to walk us all through this survey, and I would like for you to just silently score yourself on this, and you don't have to share your score. No one's expected to share their score. But if you can say yes to one of these experiences, then you would have a score of 1. And if you can say yes to all 10 of these scores, you'd have a score of 10. So it's not about severity or how many times something happened, just whether it happened or not in your childhood. Again, if you need to take a break, feel free to do that and return when you're ready. So the first category is abuse. So have you experienced physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse? Next is neglect. So physical neglect, emotional neglect, And then we move to the category of household dysfunction. So living with a family member who had a mental illness, having an incarcerated relative, witnessing your mother or stepmother being treated violently, living with a person who is struggling with a substance abuse issue, and having parents separated through divorce or other means. So take a moment to reflect on your scores, and just imagine how difficult these experiences are for people before they even turn 18. These are childhood experiences. So this study was a very important study. It was conducted by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC in California in the late 90s. And this study was when people really started to understand how childhood trauma affects people. So they did this study with over 17,000 participants and discovered that 67% of people could say yes to at least one of these things. So in their childhood, they were having at least one of these adverse experiences. And 12% of people could say yes to 4 or more of these things. And that 4 or more mark was when they started to realize the lifelong trajectory that this holds for people. So the higher an ACE score is, the more it correlates to the top leading causes of death in the United States. So that includes heart disease, lung disease, drug overdose, car accidents, and suicide. And even today, this study has been expanded and includes COVID rates now, deaths from COVID. So this was a really important study that measures how people's childhood trauma affects them long-term. And it was a really important study at the time. But as we look at the study, we recognize that it's really outdated language. So in the category of household dysfunction, where we're talking about mother being treated violently, it's a traumatic experience for a child to witness anyone being treated violently. Substance abuse. The original question talks about street drugs when we know that people are abusing prescription drugs, right? And there's a few different things in this that needed to be updated. It also doesn't include a lot of experiences that are still very traumatic for children. So there is the Philadelphia Expanded ACEs that includes racism and community violence and bullying and all sorts of other things like that. But the original ACE study has a ton of data. It's been replicated so many different times. So we'll be walking through some of that data today. But to better understand how adverse childhood experiences affect people long-term, I'm going to walk you through the ACE pyramid, and I'm going to do that by telling you a story about a kid named Earl. So Earl's adverse childhood experience was that every day his mother would verbally and physically abuse him, and that would lead to disrupted neurodevelopment. So when he would go to school and people would say things to him that he didn't like, he'd freak out, he'd be ready to fight, he'd be throwing things, and he's very, very disruptive in general. So he got kicked out of school at the end of 5th grade and he got sent to a group home. And that didn't do so great for him because he actually developed social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. So he wasn't really able to socialize with people and connect with people. He couldn't handle his emotions and he wasn't regulating himself. And then cognitively, he just wasn't where he should have been. But he did get some support systems, right? He did develop some connections. And they were unhealthy connections for him. So they actually encouraged the adoption of health risk behaviors. And he developed an addiction to crack cocaine at the age of 14. So Earl actually became DMX. He was a rapper and he had a ton of money and he had all these things going for him. And people loved DMX. But he still struggled with disease, disabilities, and social problems his entire life. He still struggled with addiction. He still struggled with chronic illness. And he still struggled with being in prison and things like that. And he still had an early death at the age of 50. So now that I've told you that story, Dan, could you tell us where along this pyramid should we be intervening in people's lives?
I mean, I would think the earlier, the better. I mean, to try to help an individual and support them, I could only imagine that the earlier, the more likely the positive outcome for that individual.
Absolutely. So the earlier, the better. So it's going to be a lot easier to intervene and to support people and to veer them away if we're starting at that adverse childhood experiences, right? We can't prevent every adverse childhood experience. Sometimes things just happen that we're just not prepared for. But being able to recognize that disrupted neurodevelopment and that social and emotional and cognitive impairment is really important, because that helps us to divert them from the path of those health risk behaviors. So Gabe, where do you think our government funding tends to focus? Which step of this pyramid?
The disease and disability and social problems.
Exactly. So disease, disabilities, and social problems, that covers things like prisons and the criminal justice system, right? But we recognize that that's a hop, skip, and jump away from early death, right? So it's not going to be as effective if we had done the early intervention that's so helpful and necessary. One other thing that I like to highlight here is that when we talk about the adoption of health risk behaviors, that's not really the best way of describing it, right? So when people are doing drugs and things like that, it's typically a form of escape or a way of coping with whatever they've got going on, right? So if we recognize that as being health risk coping skills, it's a more equal way of recognizing their experiences and without reducing it, without stigmatizing what they're going through. So there's not really anything that's super functionally different from people that do drugs versus people that drink alcohol when they're having a rough day. One just has a greater stigma associated with it. It might not be great for them. It's not healthy and it's not really supporting them. But that's the method that they've learned to help calm themselves and to get themselves back together. So we cannot take away someone's coping skills, regardless of how unhealthy they are, unless we help them find other ways of supporting themselves.
Any of our audience have any questions? This would be a great time for folks who are joining us virtually to toss questions into it. We have a little bit more on ACEs coming up, but this is a great time to pause and throw us any questions that you have around ACEs into the chat box, and we will get to them virtually.
All right, so I'm going to have you watch this clip about friends. I'm going to ask you some questions about correlation and causation.
Well, that thing's clearly in the way. All right. Aha!
Hey, Joey. How you doing?
Great. Roomy?
Yeah, I guess we are roommates now.
Yeah. Well, now that you bring it up, our fridge is broken. We have to get a new one. I checked around, and your half is $400. Thanks a lot, man.
I'm not paying for half of that. I'm only staying here until my apartment gets fixed.
Look, Rich, my parents bought this fridge just after I was born, okay? Now, I have never had a problem with it. Then you show up and it breaks. What does that tell you?
All right, so according to Joey, what was the reason his fridge broke? Gabe?
According to Joe, that Rachel was the cause of the fridge being broken.
Okay. And what was probably the real reason why his fridge broke? What about you, Reggie?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it was just broken.
Right. So his fridge, he, as said in the clip, his parents actually bought the fridge after he was born. So that fridge is really, really old, because fridges are not supposed to last that long. So this relates to correlation and causation. Is the correlation is that Rachel actually just moved in. It's a coincidence that Joey's fridge broke and then Rachel's actually moved in. But the causation is that the fridge is actually really old. How this relates to ACEs, because often adverse childhood experiences lead to adopting health risk behaviors, but that's only a correlation, as the graphs will read off of some data from the original study, but that is not the cause exactly. There's a lot of things that happen between adverse childhood experiences and early death.
Okay, so this graph shows the correlation between ACEs, smoking, and lung disease. So we're going to look at early smoking initiation. So for a person with a score of 4 or more, they have a 13% chance of early smoking compared to someone with a score of 0, which has about a 4% chance. Next, for currently smoking, so they would still be smoking into their adulthood, someone with a score of 4 or more would have a 17% chance. Versus someone with a score of 0 who would have a 7% chance. Next is COPD, which is chronic lung disease. So someone with a score of 4 or more would have a 7% chance of developing COPD as compared to a score of 0, which would have a 4% chance. And the interesting thing about this is that even if someone has never smoked a day in their life, they still have a higher chance of developing COPD. Because of chronic stress can actually lead to inflammation in the lungs and things like that that can lead to that lung disease. And this slide shows the correlation between ACEs and drug addiction. So someone with a score of 5 or more has a 9.2 chance of developing a drug addiction compared to someone with a score of 0 who has a less than 1% chance. This slide shows the correlation between ACEs and teen sexual behaviors. So someone with a score of 4 or more has a 27% chance of having intercourse by the age of 15, compared to a score of 0 who would have a 5% chance. Next is teen pregnancy. So someone with a score of 4 or more would have a 42% chance of teen pregnancy, compared to someone with a score of 0 who would have a 20% chance. And next is teen paternity. So someone with a score of 4 or more would have a 35% chance of needing to take a paternity test as a teen, compared to someone with a score of 0 who would be at about 15% chance. So the thing about these graphs, like Kaori said, is that they show correlation and not causation. So having a high ACE score does not definitively mean that you are going to experience all of these adverse things. However, it is more likely, it is an increased risk. But there are also protective factors that prevent people from experiencing these things, right? So I myself have a pretty high ACE score, but these are not all things that have happened to me because I also have a lot of protective factors that have helped me to avoid these things.
All right, so now we're going to talk about invisible backpack. So here at Hopeworks, the term invisible backpack is basically something that everyone is carrying around. And in that backpack, there's past experiences, good and bad, underlying patterns, what we see and what we don't understand, something that probably happened to you this morning or something that happened to you 14 years ago. So we're going to have you watch a clip from Inside Out, and I would like to examine what is in these characters' invisible backpack with some follow-up questions.
So, as it turns out, the green trash can is not recycling. It's for greens, like compost and eggshells. And the blue one is recycling. And the black one.
Riley is acting so weird. Why is she acting so weird?
What do you expect? All the islands are down.
Joy would know what to do.
That's it. Until she gets back, we just do what Joy would do.
Great idea. Anger, fear, disgust. How are we supposed to be happy?
Hey, Riley, I've got good news. I found a junior hockey league right here in San Francisco. And get this, tryouts are tomorrow after school. What luck, right?
Hockey. Uh-oh. What do we do?
Guys, here, you pretend to be Joy.
Wouldn't it be great to be back out on the ice?
Oh, yeah. That sounds fantastic.
What was that? That wasn't anything like Joy.
Because I'm not Joy?
Yeah, no kidding.
Did you guys pick up on that?
Sure did.
Something's wrong. Should we ask her?
Let's probe, but keep it subtle so she doesn't notice. So, how was the first day of school?
She's probing us.
I'm done. You pretend to be Joy.
What? Okay.
It was fine, I guess. I don't know. Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on.
She's never acted like this before. What do we do? We're going to find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband. Ahem.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
He's making that stupid face again.
I could strangle him right now.
Signal him again.
So, Riley, how was school?
Riley! You gotta be kidding me. For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot?
Move! I'll be joy.
School was great, all right?
Riley, is everything okay?
Sir, she just rolled her eyes at us.
What is her deal? All right, make a show of force. I don't want to have to put the foot down.
No, not the foot.
Riley, I do not like this new attitude.
Oh, I'll show you attitude. No. Stay happy!
What is your problem? Just leave me alone.
Sir, reporting high levels of sass.
Take it to DEFCON 2.
You heard that, gentlemen? DEFCON 2.
Listen, young lady, I don't know where this disrespectful attitude came from.
You want a piece of this, Pops? Come and get it!
Yeah, well...
Here it comes. Prepare the foot.
Keys to safety position. Ready to launch on your command, sir.
Just shut up!
Fire!
That's it. Go to your room. Now.
Foot is down. The foot is down.
Good job, gentlemen. That could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
Okay. So Dan, what do you think was in Riley's invisible backpack?
Well, they're probably dealing with something, maybe a big transition. I have not seen the movie, but no, I really want to.
Good. It's perfect that you haven't seen the movie, because then we get to speculate and we have no background for this. Awesome.
Correct. But I mean, I obviously Riley was, dealing with a lot of emotions, and I would imagine the transition was really hard, and so they were focused on that.
Yeah, sounds like she had a lot of things that she didn't really know how to quite verbalize them. So Eileen, what do you think was in the mom's invisible backpack?
I think she was using tools like, excuse me, trying to ask questions. Like she was going to probe, but not be too obvious about it, concerned as a mom, and wanting to have an engaging conversation because she cared about what was going on with Riley. But it wasn't working the way she wanted it to.
No, it was not. She definitely noticed that something was off, and she was trying to figure out, okay, so what's going on here? And looked like she wanted some support from the dad to get into that and kind of make sure that it was a family discussion as opposed to just making it seem like the mom was the only one that cared. And
yeah, she didn't want to be the bad guy. She was trying to get help from the husband, but he was totally out of it. Didn't pay any attention at all.
So what was in his invisible backpack?
Anger reaction, trying to put the foot down, be authoritative, be the guy. And
that authority, absolutely.
Didn't work. That didn't work either. So they need some help with some more tools in their backpack.
But I think that's a really great point, is that like the way that we're raised and our gender roles and like all of that is also in our backpacks, right? And so the way that we're raised and like the roles of masculine and feminine, what we think we're supposed to do are also things that go into our invisible backpacks.
Exactly. We definitely need help with that.
Yep. So he wasn't even paying attention to what was going on. And he said something that had already been said before and had a negative reaction. And instead of checking what was in his invisible backpack and maybe admitting that he wasn't paying attention and didn't know what was going on, and apologizing for making that happen, he decided to pull into that authoritative stance, right? And pull his power. And we saw how poorly that went, right? But that happens all the time. Because we tend to be when we're in positions of authority, we tend to pretend that we don't have an invisible backpack, and what we carry around with us doesn't really matter because we're we're in power, so we're smart enough to know how to handle it, except that we don't always know how to handle it. And things like this happen. And when we mess up, it's usually not us that has to suffer those consequences. It's usually the people that we're supposed to be supporting and the people that we're supposed to be caring for, or the people that we're supposed to be supervising, that are going to have to suffer those consequences. And the dad messed up, but Riley was the one who had to suffer the consequences in that situation. And when this happens, we push people away. And some really unfortunate things happen when this happens. And it's really important for us to be in mind of our own invisible backpacks and recognize how they can clash and collide with other people's invisible backpacks, to make sure we know what we're carrying around, and we don't want to spill that out on other people. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I always like to jump in here because of the three of us, I'm the supervisor, right? And I will admit that I don't always come into work in the best moods. If anyone knows Philadelphia in the core network, I have the pleasure of driving on this itty bitty terrible road called Lincoln Drive every single morning. It is a narrow road that gives me a headache, and it just has the worst drivers in the whole world, I am convinced. And I take my life into my hands every single day. And sometimes I come in not in the best mood. And when I come in not in the best mood, I'm carrying that around in my invisible backpack. And some days I am not a great supervisor and boss. And when I come in with my invisible backpack, and my invisible backpack collides with, let's say, Kaori's invisible backpack, and neither one of us has any idea what happened, who's more likely to get in trouble, me or Kaori? It's probably not going to be me, right? It's probably going to be the young person in our program that suffers those consequences. And so it's my responsibility to know how to deal with the stuff in my invisible backpack. And my invisible backpack makes me who I am, right? My invisible backpack is the reason that I do my job. It's the reason that I am good at my job most of the time. But it's also the reason that I'm not great at my job. And the secret is that a lot of the times when we're working with young people know how to press the buttons in our invisible backpacks. They find those weak spots and they like to tap dance over them. And so they're going to find the places to hit our invisible backpacks and to really, really drive us insane. It's our jobs to realize what those weak points are and to figure out how to manage our emotions around them, because we need to figure that out so that we can better serve the young people that we are in direct service to. So, moving on to changing the question. So, if you don't take away anything else from this presentation, we want you to remember to change the question, because changing the question is really the what of trauma-informed practices. And so to do this, Jason and I are going to tell you the story of two young people who came through Hopeworks before and after we were trauma-informed. And you are going to see the difference between these two young people. And this is really the what of trauma-informed care. So to illustrate this, I'm going to tell you a story about a young person named Hakeem. So Hakeem came to Hopeworks. He was a 17-year-old high school dropout, and he needed a paycheck. So he came to Hopeworks because he figured that he could get a pretty easy paycheck. So we pay folks to go through our training program. So he was going, he was a 17-year-old high school dropout, needed a paycheck. So his friend told him about Hopeworks, and he decided that he was going to come check it out. So he came to Hopeworks and got a tour of our program. He was like, seems like a pretty easy way to make some money. So he decided to come next day and get started. So he came the next day to get started. Did not start out on the best foot. He was late his first day, but we have to hand it to him. He was pretty consistent. He was late his second day, his third day, his fourth day, his ninth day, his 10th day, his 12th day, his 100th day. This boy was late to come see us. He was late every single day to come to Hopeworks. We also have some rules here at Hopeworks because we are a professional work environment. We have clients coming in every day. We have new trainees. We have funders. We have folks coming into our offices every single day. And so every day he was coming in and he was not following any of our rules. So we don't like folks to eat and drink in the training room. We would prefer that they didn't hang out in the kitchen for long periods of the time. And we would like them to speak in a respectful manner and to not be on their cell phones all the time. But he didn't let any of these things stand in his way. He was always in the kitchen. He was eating and drinking in the training room, always on his cell phone. And whenever someone would try to correct his behavior, to try to coach him into a better way of behaving in the office, he would yell at them and say, "You're not my mom. You're not my dad. I'm just here for a paycheck." So eventually, our staff got really, really tired of this behavior and decided that this probably wasn't the best place for him. But we wanted to slap a nice name on it, wanted to make ourselves feel a little bit better. And so we told him that he just wasn't ready for this opportunity. But if he ever was ready to come back and to take it seriously, that our doors would be open to him. So Jace, would you like to tell them about Jorge?
Yeah, so Jorge was completely different. So a little bit of background on him. When he was 8, his mom died in a tragic car accident. So that left him and his dad with his 2 younger sisters. Then when he was 17, him and his 2 younger sisters came home from school one day and their dad wasn't there. And he didn't come home the next day or the next day. And they finally figured out that he had gotten deported. And they didn't want to tell anybody about anything because they didn't want to get split up, but they really didn't know what they were supposed to do with just a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 13-year-old all by themselves. So Jorge dropped out of school and he got a job working at McDonald's. He got a job working at McDonald's, and he wasn't making a lot of money. It was kind of like a hush-hush thing because technically he was supposed to have his high school diploma. So a friend told him about Hopeworks. So he came to Hopeworks and he took a tour and he got started and he went flying through our program. He completed it in like record time. He got an internship on our GIS team. And he got his high school diploma through our ABS program. And he actually ended up going to college after he worked with us. And when he opened up and told us about everything that was going on, we were able to support him with food resources and legal services and all sorts of things to make sure that he got himself together. But the really interesting thing about this is that Hakeem and Jorge are the exact same person. Nothing changed about him. What changed was us. So we started practicing trauma-informed practices, and we started changing the question from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. Instead of asking what's wrong with you, why are you late every single day, we said, hey, what's going on? Why are you so consistently late? What's happening? And he opened up and told us that he needed to get his sisters to school on time because he didn't want the school to think something was going on and end up trying to call for a parent when they didn't have any parents. Okay, well, what's going on? Why are you eating in the training room or in the kitchen all day long? Well, I need to make sure that I eat while I'm here so that all the food that we have at home goes to my sisters. Okay, that makes sense. And the more that we ask what's going on instead of what's wrong with you and stop treating him like he was the problem, he started opening up and started telling us about what his circumstances were. And we started opening up about what we could do to help him and how we could support him. Instead of judging him and treating him like he was wrong with everything, we started to recognize that it wasn't him that was wrong. It was, number one, it was us because of the way that we treated him in the first place. But number two, it was his circumstances and that he was dealing with things that he didn't have the capacity for. He was flipping out at us because he didn't know what else he was supposed to do. And we were the ones who kept pushing him over and over and over again. So changing the question from what's wrong with you to what happened to you is really important for making sure that you are having meaningful conversations with people and making sure that you're able to support them. But it's also really important for changing your mindset around your day-to-day life. So thinking about my own commute, I commute through public transportation through Philadelphia into Camden, New Jersey. I use multiple different systems and it is an exhausting experience. But instead of acting like SEPTA and Petco are out to get me and they hate me in particular, recognizing that it's a really big system. There's a whole lot of people that use it and sometimes things just mess up. and really understanding that it's not the people, they're just people that are working and they also have problems that they're going through. So changing the question really helps us to be more compassionate, and it helps us to really understand other people's situations. And it takes a lot of the mental and emotional energy off of us to blame everybody for everything.
It severely helps with my commute on Lincoln Drive also. Instead, whenever a driver cuts me off, it's not, oh my God, what's wrong with that person? It's like, what's going on with their morning that they are in such a rush? And that just takes a lot of that out of me and makes me a better human.
And with that, we're going to talk about safety plan and self-care plans. So safety plan is something that you can do during work if you feel yourself becoming frustrated, angry, or unsafe at work. So, Eileen, what do you do when you feel frustrated or angry at work?
Well, I try to stop and maybe take a breath. And I try to share something that might be relevant or ask relevant questions, because my natural reaction is to just shut down and be quiet and close off and, just have that kind of quiet shutdown reaction and then get all scared like, oh no, what's going to happen next? But I try to stop that and, like I said, and breathe and try to think of what would be the next, good thing to do, or what's the best thing to say, in this situation. So that's kind of how I deal with stress at work.
That sounds like a really good safety plan, Eileen. What about you, Reggie? What's your safety plan?
That's an excellent question. For me personally, since I do have like social anxiety to a certain extent, my safety plan, especially when I'm stressed at work, the only thing that can really keep me calm is me talking to myself, or listen to some type of R&B slow jams or something of the sort, because I can get to a point where I'm like, hey, I'm stressed out to the max. But if I can, focus my mind somewhere else, and listen, I think that helps me out the best.
Those are great. So some other ones would be like taking deep breaths, thinking before reacting, counting to 10. Other ones that I love, saying the alphabet backwards in your head. Way more effective than you would think. It kind of tricks you into going back into the thinking part of your brain. And the other one that I'm going to teach you right now is actually our square breathing or our box breathing. And so what we're going to do is we are going to make a box with our breath. So we're going to inhale for 4, then we're going to hold for 4, and then we're going to exhale for 4, and then we're going to hold for 4. So we're going to just do that together real fast. We're going to inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. So that square breathing or 4x4 breathing is one of the most effective ways to lower your heart rate and get control of your brain. So it's so effective. I learned it when I was in high school and a very anxious test taker, but it's so effective that it's actually taught to EMTs, it's taught to the US military. It's that effective at getting control of your breath, your heart rate, and your thoughts. So would anyone else on the call like to share anything, any part of their safety plans?
I'll share water or something, like just, giving myself a couple of seconds to drink water, or go get up from my seat and grab water and, at a water fountain or a water cooler. Water tends to be very calming for me.
That one's great, Dan. And there's actually a lot of science behind that. You can't swallow and cry. You can't swallow and hyperventilate. You can't swallow and hiccup at the same time. And so it's a really great one to calm yourself down. Kaori, sorry I interrupted you.
So now we're going to talk about self-care plans. This is something you can do before or after you go to work to help prevent using the safety plan. What I like to do as a self-care plan is to rest. I like to rest after a hard day's work. Does anyone else want to share their self-care plan after or before they go to work?
I'll share a little bit. So I'll do like some meditating in the morning for like 20 minutes. And then also I'll try to spend some alone time doing some reading or something like that.
Yeah, I think exercise for me is really helpful, even if it's just like a nice, pleasant walk outside or finding some trees and walking in the woods or nature helps to rejuvenate me, fills up my cup.
Yes, so self-care can also be the things that you also don't want to do, but it would still help you in the long run, like doing laundry or washing dishes or doing taxes. It may not be enjoyable, but it does help your overall life or hygienic part of your lives that you need to fulfill so you can do more fun things like shopping or playing video games to help you relax.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll share one that is not thought of super frequently, but particularly in the kind of work that I know that all of the staff on this call is a part of, trying to think of something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end is super important. A lot of the work that all of you are a part of and the staff at Hopeworks is all a part of is never really finished, right? We are helping people. We're part of people's lives for a short period of time while they're doing this great big change. And they are on their journey of workforce development, but that doesn't mean we get to see the end necessarily. And so it feels like we're always in flux. And so doing a puzzle, for example, or crafting something, or doing a DIY project in your house can feel really, really fulfilling. And it fulfills the part of your brain that needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. Our brains really like tasks that are time bound and have an ending point. So I really like embroidery, for example. And part of the reason that I like that is I get that dopamine hit that my brain needs when I finish a task, because nothing in the work that we do ever feels finished, right? It's always, we're helping people to grow and to prosper, and a person is never finished growing. And so we never really get to see the end. So finding something that you can do on a daily basis that has a beginning, a middle, and an ending can be really, really helpful for your personal self-care. So just keeping that in mind when you're thinking about self-care tasks for yourself. Okay, and then one more tool that we have for you is our huddle. Oh, my bad, I scrolled too far.
Okay, so huddle is the conference meeting that we do here at Hopeworks at the beginning and the end of every day. And it's just a way for us to, one, connect, but it's also a way for us to connect with ourselves, right? So making sure that we are reaching the goals that we intend to set for that day and that we are practicing our emotional regulation throughout the day. So the first question that we ask is, how are you feeling today? And we're very intentional about making sure that people are answering this question with actual emotion words. So not good, fine, or okay, but really digging into, I'm feeling happy or frustrated or calm, things like that, to make sure that people are really getting in touch with their emotions. Because one thing that trauma does is it takes away our ability to feel our emotions. And you can't really process your emotions until you know exactly what you're feeling. You have to identify your emotions first before you can really understand what's happening and how to change it. Next is, how do you want to feel at the end of the day? So this is just a reminder that our emotions aren't set in stone. So we can change our emotions. And if we are feeling frustrated in the morning, it doesn't mean you're going to feel frustrated all day. So thinking about how you want to feel is really important. And then what is on your safety plan to help you feel that way? So this does two things. One, it reminds us that there is some work that goes into changing our emotions instead of just like sitting there with our frustration, but like, eventually I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happy eventually. It's like, no, we're going to put in some effort and do something about that emotion. But also it reminds us that we have our safety plans that we've literally just talked about. And that's something that we can continue to remind ourselves of what's on that safety plan. And then what is your goal for today? So regardless of how we're feeling, it's really important to set a goal and to accomplish something with our day. Otherwise, it doesn't really help me to come to work if I'm just going to be frustrated and frumpy all day and unpleasant to be around. So finding something that I can do for that day, because setting goals is also really important for helping us regulate our emotions. When you set a goal and you complete that goal, it feels amazing. And then who are you going to ask for help or encouragement? Something else that that trauma can do is it takes away our ability to ask for help. Trauma teaches us that asking for help is dangerous. So best case scenario, you ask for help and nothing ever happens and no one does anything. But the worst case scenario that we learn from trauma is that if you ask for help, someone's going to realize that you're vulnerable and find a way to hurt you. So we need to encourage people to ask for help because it's really important to ask for help, because it's a job skill. It's not just something that we do to get support, but it's really important to make sure that we recognize that we can't get everything done without the help and support of other people. So we are going to demonstrate a brief huddle for you today. Miles and Gabe, would you like to join us for huddle?
Sure.
Awesome. So, Gabe, how are you feeling?
I feel a little anxious.
Would you like to check in?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Okay. How would you like to feel at the end of the day?
I like to feel peaceful.
Wonderful. And what is on your safety plan to help you feel that way?
Doing the square breathing and also some mindfulness.
And what's your goal for today?
My goal for today is to do a good job at work.
And who can you look to for support or encouragement?
I'll look to Miles for some support and anyone else who I interact with during the day.
Wonderful.
All right. So, Miles, how are you feeling?
Ready for the day.
All right. And how do you want to feel at the end of the day?
I'd like to feel relaxed.
And what's on your safety plan to help you feel that way?
My safety plan is to drink water and take walks when needed.
What's your key goal?
My key goal is to remain focused on my tasks for the day.
And who can you ask for support or encouragement?
You as well as my peers in Hopeworks.
Nice. All right. Thank you.
And Kiori, how are you feeling? You're on mute.
I'm feeling happy today.
Okay, that's good. And how would you like to feel at the end of the day?
I would like to feel relaxed.
Okay, and what's your safety plan to help you feel that way?
Safety plan is to drink tea and listen to music.
Okay, and what's your key goal?
My key goal today is to have a good day at work.
Okay, and who can you look to for encouragement and support? I'm always willing to help.
I will look to the Hopeworks Training Team for support today.
Have a good day.
Jace, how are you feeling today?
I am feeling excited.
And how would you like to feel at the end of the day?
I would like to feel relaxed.
And what is your safety plan to help you feel that way?
Today, I am going to check in with people as needed.
And what is your key goal for today?
My key goal for today is to make sure that I'm supportive of everyone on our team.
And who can help and support you with that?
I'm going to look to Kate and our team and everyone here with the Core Network.
That sounds great.
So that was an example of huddle. And you may have noticed that when Gabe mentioned that he was feeling anxious, that I asked if he wanted to check in. And that is an option that we offer people when they express that they're feeling sad or unhappy or any of those emotions that we tend to feel are like really scary. And That's because when we offer to check in, we want to make sure that we're giving them that option, but also allowing them to say no if they want to. We're not forcing people to talk about their emotions. And that's a private check-in that they do after huddle. But we're not forcing people to check in about their feelings, because if we try to force someone into a room to talk about how they're feeling, they're just going to learn that they're not allowed to tell people when they're feeling upset. They're just going to lie to us and say that they're feeling happy even when they're not. So giving people the space to practice their safety plans and regulate their emotions instead of forcing them to tell us everything so that we can try to fix their emotions is really important.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for participating. If you'd like to learn more about Hopeworks, you can scan the QR code there, and you can find links to all of our slide decks. Thank you so much for participating today, and we are super excited to interact with you some more in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate, Jace, and Kiori. We've had a really meaningful conversation around being mindful of our past experiences and those of others so that we can all be our best, especially at work. The contact information for our presenters is in the session description if you'd like to reach out. And the Q&A feature for this session will stay open for the rest of the conference. So feel free to post your questions or comments there, and we will monitor that. Thank you all for joining us for this session, and we hope you enjoy the rest of CorpsCon 2023.